Coming to you from the podcast studio of WTAP Plus, you're watching Learning Legal with your host, Megan Marshall.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this new podcast, Learning Legal. I'm Megan Marshall. And basically on this podcast, we'll be diving into a variety of topics that have to do with legal things. And today, I'm actually joined by Jim Leach. So thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Megan. Appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. So what I first there's a lot of topics we could cover, but I think a good one to start with is going to be kind of the history of Wood County and specifically your family in the county. So I guess we can just kind of dive in. Can you kind of talk about your family connection in the county?
Sure. Wood County is pretty important to my family because on both sides of my family, we have been here since it was Wood County, Virginia. My grandfather on my mother's side was Henry Cooper. His cabin is in the city park, and he settled here in the late 1700s. His claim to fame was he built the first two-story log cabin in Wood County.
Wow.
After his death, it was purchased by the city of Parkersburg for $400, moved to the city park, reassembled, and is now a museum that's operated by Daughters of American Pioneers, I believe is the name of their organization. I've taken my children there to visit it many times. On my father's side, the founder of Leachtown, Willis Leach, is my grandfather, and he settled here, and they came from Virginia as well in 1805. And so ever since then, we've had family here in Wood County. My children, four of whom all live in West Virginia, a fact I'm very proud of. It's very hard to keep your kids here. So,
Yeah.
So our involvement in fact, I brought a little prop here. I'll show you.
Okay, let's see it.
Yeah, I made this for my kids when they were little. This is the family tree, if I can hold it straight. The top is Henry Cooper. You can see his cabin there.
Yeah.
That is my grandfather. Beside that, his name was John Sherman Gwynn. He ran for mayor for the city of Parkersburg. He lost, but he ran for mayor in the early 60s. Mm-hmm. And then in the bottom right of the frame, you see my grandfather, J.D. Leach, who operated J.D. Leach Dairy in Wood County for many years. Of course, putting the milk bottles on your front porch.
Yeah.
And then the other little prop I brought, because I'm very proud of this. So my family's been blue collar my whole life.
Yeah.
Blue, Democrat, West Virginia history. In modern times, that's changed, of course. But this was the gold watch that my grandfather got, J. Russell Leach.
Wow.
I'm named after him. He was Russell James. I'm James Russell. And this is his O-Ames shovel. And it's inscribed Russell J. Leach, 36 years, O-Ames Company. So, telling this little bit of history and our roots in Wood County, it's a big source of pride for our family. And the fact that we're still here after all these years when we've had such a mass exodus in population in West Virginia, is something that my wife Joanna and I are pretty proud of.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, going back to the map you've made here on the frame, how did you start putting that together? I guess when did you start doing that over there?
So in 2000, I ran for prosecuting attorney in Wood County. And after I started my campaign, a woman named Juanita Burke came to me and she said, your grandfather was Henry Cooper. And I did not know it at the time. And she had prepared a genealogy tracing all the descendants of Henry Cooper. Wow. I did know about Willis Leach because my grandmother had told me about that family. And in fact, Willis Leach married a woman who came over on a boat and was descended from a count and countess from Prussia.
Wow.
So land and title, I got nothing. All right. But as far as the lineage in Wood County, we certainly have that going on.
Yeah, definitely a rich lineage. It's so cool when you can see your family history in that respect. So it's super awesome. Okay. So my next question is going to be, let's see. So growing up with a family with such deep roots here, what made you decide to pursue law?
So, like I said, fame and fortune didn't necessarily come with the lineage. And I was raised with four sisters, and my mother raised us by herself at that time. And we grew up over in Avery Street, Spring Street, tough part of Parkersburg. I'm not the biggest guy in the world, right? So I had to learn how to scrap early. And I saw injustice. I saw things at that point. And this would have been in the late 60s, early 70s. And there's no legal lineage in my family. There was, again, blue collar. My my one grandfather, he serviced vending machines at DuPont and Kaiser
Yeah.
and all of the local plants. My other grandfather worked at the shovel plant. My dad worked in retail all his life. So it just kind of a sense of justice and right. I don't like to see people mistreated. I tell
Absolutely.
people that, I don't pick a side based on Republican or Democrat. It's if somebody's being treated unjustly, I'm on their side, right? If you're treating someone unjustly, I'm against you. And that's I think I was about ninth grade when I decided I wanted to go to law school, and eventually was able to fulfill that dream. Now 2 of my children have followed that path and are lawyers as well.
Wow. Okay. Well, pausing right there, we're going to take a brief break and we're going to go into a commercial, but we will be right back. So, all right, we're going to pause for a couple minutes. I'm going to figure out how I can get back to my camera because I don't know. Oh, there it goes. Okay. Cool. All right, we're going to go ahead and jump back in. Okay. There we
What do
go.
you think as far as length of answers?
I think they were good, yeah. We're at the 7-minute mark, so we've got 7 more minutes. So I think we'll get through our questions, which is good. Okay. And then let me make sure. Perfect. Okay. All right. Welcome back. So I have another question for you. As someone who practices law here, and because you made that decision at like such an early age to practice, can you kind of talk about the legal landscape of Wood County over the years and kind of how it's evolved?
So early in my practice, I was an assistant prosecuting attorney. I mentioned I ran for prosecutor and lost. But always in the law I practice, I've had the burden of proof. As a prosecutor, you have to prove somebody guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Then after that, I'm in civil practice. I'm a litigation attorney, and we also have the burden of proof, whether it be a personal injury claim, a commercial contract, or whatever it might be. The law doesn't change fast, but it has changed in the 30 years that I practice in some significant ways. And at least from my perspective, a lot of consumer rights have been lost. I've practiced, for example, the poster child for the frivolous lawsuit would be the McDonald's coffee case. And that is, I think, from 1994.
Yeah.
Now, there are younger people for the first time, because I would always ask people to gauge their understanding of the legal landscape they were in if they'd heard of the McDonald's coffee case. I'm starting to get people maybe your age that had not necessarily heard of it, but that's been the
No.
first time ever. We've had the C8 litigation in Wood County. We've had, the changes in the legislature from, West Virginia was a solid blue state for decades and decades. We're a solid red state now. That impacts the law in West Virginia in different ways. So I've seen a lot of change in my career. And now with the advent of AI, which is affecting every walk, every profession, every area of life, that's dramatically changing the landscape of the law. In fact, we have the duty, if I'm going to use AI in the representation, I have to advise you, get your consent. Because we all have heard about AI hallucinations.
Yes.
Not a good thing to happen.
No.
People citing cases that don't exist.
Yes.
Proceed with caution.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And I am just curious, the McDonald's case, was that when they didn't have the sleeves on the coffee?
It was just, it was a hot coffee case. And the insurance industry, of course, I'm biased, in favor of plaintiffs, people who were hurt by defective products and so forth. But this was elderly lady, not real familiar with fast food coffee. Spilled it on her. She had like 8 or 9 skin grafts. There was evidence.
Wow.
McDonald's had been advised 800 or 900 times of people being severely burnt by their coffee. It was a very misunderstood case, and you don't try to change anybody's mind, because the only thing you can ask a jury to do is listen to the facts of your case, apply the law as the judge tells you, and realize you have the power to make a difference in that case. So people have different opinions about the McDonald's coffee case, but it was definitely used to perpetrate the concept of the frivolous lawsuit, which persists to this day. And, of course, not every lawsuit is meritorious.
Yeah. Okay. So kind of building off of that, are there any landmark legal cases or even court decisions from Wood County's history that have had a significant impact on this community?
Sure. And I'm not involved in that. I'll have a little bit of story with that, too. If you've heard or seen the movie Dark Waters, that
Yes, I
is the
have.
story of C8.
Yeah.
C8, that investigation originated with former clients of mine, Jim and Della Tennant. Jim Tennant was the individual who had the cows who got sick, and nobody understood it. And then Robert Ballot out of Cincinnati was the first lawyer to get involved. Jim and Della called me because I had represented them on an unrelated matter before that.
Wow.
I said, this is a special area of the law. You need competent counsel. And they got in touch with Mr. Ballot, and that, Harry Dietzler has been instrumental in that litigation. That redefined protections in Wood County. A lot of that litigation originated here. It's resulted, like, for example, I'm on city council in Vienna, and we started having, even though we're upriver from DuPont, we started testing positive for C8 in our water. DuPont spun off Chemours. Chemours put in the carbon filtration system for Vienna's water supply.
Yeah.
And so that's been a dramatic, improvement in healthcare, because hundreds of thousands of people have been impacted by C8 and compensated through the efforts of these attorneys, holding these chemical giants accountable for the contamination in our water system.
Yeah. And something you had touched on earlier, the strong sense of justice. So for you personally, and also just because now it kind of is running in your family and as far as the legal profession goes, can you kind of talk a little bit about why that's really important for you, especially with having such deep roots in the community?
Sure. There's so many people who don't have power, and we see that. When we see the discussions about what's happening on the national level right now with our constitutional rights, with due process, when I was a prosecutor, I realized the awesome power that the government has. And whereas somebody might be guilty, for example, in the criminal context, they are still entitled to their constitutional rights, and the government has that burden to prove them guilty before they take their liberty, right? So stepping in between somebody who is powerless or helpless in a situation to put them in a better position, whatever the circumstance is, and often you don't do it for the money. I do not practice law for money. It's a byproduct of the service that I provide, certainly, because I had to raise 4 kids, right? But that's not the meaning of it. The meaning of it is that you step in the gap for people who don't have the power or the resource to defend themselves or to assert their rights, whatever the context of that legal claim is. And I would tell people that, we're getting more tools available, AI, so on. It can give you additional information. But when I first started practicing, if they couldn't talk to a lawyer, they had nowhere to go. They're going to go to the law library and start trying to figure out how to understand what their situation was. It just wasn't possible.
Right.
So that's been really what's driven me, putting people in a better position relative to what's going on as it relates to the law in their life.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah. Fun fact, my grandpa actually had to do that for a case he's been in. I was like, what? Because he knew so much about it. I was like, how do you know so much about this? And he was like, well, I had to go to the library and I actually had to sit down and read the law books because I was representing myself. And I'm like, that's a lot of work. So I can't imagine that. But
well, you're obviously intelligent, and your grandfather was too, because many people simply don't have the capability of understanding some of these complex issues that you can come across. And the law is very elegant.
Yes, it is definitely very complex. And it's one of those things where I enjoy reading it personally just because I love that kind of, I don't want to call it data, but like that set of reading material, I guess you could say. But it's without the schooling, it definitely makes it more challenging.
So when you consider trying to reduce a body of rules legislation to the human condition and make it apply across decades and make sense, that's why I say it's elegant. I always start with the concept that, look, if this is happening with my client now, it's happened to somebody before, and I need to find out how that's been treated and how it's understood. And then also, of course, this thinking evolves over time. But yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining me today on this very first episode of Learning Legal.
Well, you're welcome, and I wish you the best success. Your podcast booth is very cool.
Right? Isn't it? It's very fun.
It is, Megan. So I appreciate you inviting me.
Absolutely.
I would invite you to invite my son Morgan, who has a different perspective, different generation of practicing law, and he has a lot of creative ideas about how to advance people's interest, in this modern era. So thanks again for inviting me, and best of luck with your podcast.
Thank you. Yeah. So that will wrap up for this first episode, but we will see you again in our next one. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
you.